My name is Amira Diamond, and I'm one of the co-directors at Women's Earth Alliance. And I've been so looking forward to this evening when we get to be together to hear from the wisdom of Pandora Thomas. And I want to start by sharing with you all a little bit about the work of Women's Earth Alliance. Maybe people want to start just putting into the chat where you're calling in from tonight, so we can get a sense of where this Zoom room is located. Thank you so much to everybody for turning out. Women's Earth Alliance was founded in 2006, and our organization was founded by 30 women from 26 countries who came together to look at how to build a global initiative that would support and uplift the leadership of grassroots women leaders at the helm of our most pressing environmental and climate challenges, how to build an initiative that would center justice and human rights and environmental justice and climate justice. And from the very beginning of this organization, the need for training, for access to resources, for access to skills and tools that can up-level and upscale the work that's rising from communities was the call. And so over the last 15 years, we've developed an alliance that connects and equips women leaders with what they need to transform their communities from the inside out. So I had the incredible pleasure of starting to work with Pandora about 10 years ago. She's been a part of WEA's work for such a long time, was at the early stage of our Women in Water program. And we traveled together to West Africa to launch that program. And for the last 2.5 years, she's been supporting the design for our US Grassroots Accelerator for Environmental and Climate Leaders. And just so honored to share Pandora's vision and framework today, to hear her speak about the power of community organizing. But you'll hear a lot about her story, and maybe a few things you won't hear about is that Pandora has lived and worked in over 12 countries. She has studied 4 languages, and I'm pretty sure she won't get to mentioning that she even has written children's books. So Pandora Thomas, I let you take it away, and it's an honor to work alongside you every day and a delight to get to hear everything that you have to share. So take it away, Pandora.
Oh, thank you, dear sister Amir. Oh, there's my big face in the Zoom screen. It went from little to now I'm looking at me and my big monarch wings. Let's give a shout out to the monarchs, everyone. And I just want to start by honoring and appreciating Amira, Melinda, Kia, Tharita, Beth, whoever is a part of the WEA family, all the international WEA family, for welcoming me in. I already typed in, we're probably going to be here past 6 o'clock. I didn't know I was about to have family in the room. All these people that I love and honor. I also want you to know I'm care partner for my cute little mother. She's over there. So if you see me going like that, I'm just checking on her, making sure she's still breathing and laughing and dancing. But again, just such an honor to be here with you, to be a part of the WEA family, to be a part of the Women Solutionaries. That's the word for the moment, solutionaries. And so appreciating Kia, she's running my slides and my videos. And this evening, we're gonna have a little discussion. I am going to be doing most of the talking, and also I had asked them if it's possible that I can see some of you all. So instead of taking your screens off, if you can be there and actually act like you're in a Black church, if you've ever, like, respond. If you've never been in a Black church, think of a concert you've been to or a speaker you've heard that you enjoyed. And if you're feeling me, show me, because that's what, I kind of need that. I am in the moment where I'm like, what do people think? Carrie gets me. Carrie knows me. So nod in the head, hand, whatever you got to do. Just send me your, yes, Tasha feels me. So the Black church energy is what I'm calling in. And if we can bring up our slides, there we go. So my talk is called We Are the Ones, because, we're doing a lot of waiting right now. We're waiting for one older European American gentleman to leave a certain house and another one to come in. We're waiting for vaccine scientists and doctors to tell us when this so-called life-saving thing is going to come. We're waiting for our leaders to tell us when we can gather again, together again. We waiting for test results. We're doing a lot of waiting. I think 2020 has been the waitingest year I have ever experienced, kind of waiting around for other people to let us know when is it safe to be human again. But you know what? We don't need to be waiting around no more, because we are the ones. That's what the name of my talk is tonight. No one is coming to save us greater than us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. In the words of Sweet, yes, Elizabeth, Sweet Honey in the Rock, we are the ones. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the journey that I've had the honor to take, the others that have worked with me, and try to just really stir up that idea. We ain't waiting no more, because we here. And all the people that you see in the screen, the neighbors you may not be able to touch, they don't even know they're the ones, but they're the ones too. So that is what we will talk about this evening. We are the ones, and how these ecological principles that we also are what is here to give us. They've always been here, and they ain't going nowhere. If anything, humans will go somewhere off the planet, but even still, we still gonna be the ones. So next slide. Anyone who's ever heard me speak, and for those of you new folks, I want to honor and appreciate you for spending your Tuesday evening with me. And especially, we're all going to start by honoring all of those that have come before us. This image is a SANKOFA bird. It's a West African bird from Ghana specifically, which means we must know from where we came from, or simply go back and fetch it. And in this spirit of us being the ones, not only are we the ones, we have been equipped. Our ancestors, human and non-human, have equipped us in our DNA to be here, y'all. And as to my girl, Zakiya Harris, who you heard singing, midwife in this new era of leadership and just beauty that we are all embracing. And so the SANKOFA bird inspires us to think about, on whose shoulders do we stand? So I want you all to think of, and I'm going to actually ask you to think of a woman or female identified being on whose shoulders you stand. Your SANKOFA. Who has inspired you to do the work in the world? Be the person you are. Know that you are the ones, and ain't nobody coming to save us. So your SANKOFA, as you are embodying and drawing in that name, that spirit, please start typing it into the chat. And I've told people I can't look into the chat because I—
Are you gonna go to the farmer's market?
I am. I've got to finish my work.
Somebody should mute, but that's
Your
okay.
work for
UC Berkeley.
okay.
Oh, that's my girl, Aya De Leon. Hi, Aya, and her husband. Could you mute? I'm glad I got to hear you, though, and tell him I said hi. But make sure, everybody, that you mute. So as you're typing in your SANKOFAs, Fannie Lou Hamer, on whose shoulders do we stand? Because again, if you would listen to the news or the shenaniganry, you would think we dealing with stuff that ain't never been dealt with before. Like our ancestors, especially our indigenous and African ancestors, have not been wiped out by pandemics with before, which they have. They made it through. So we really need to draw on, where do we come from? Human and non-human. I think of the redwoods. I think of all the elder First Nation communities. I live in Berkeley, California. All of them that tended to, stewarded, and cared for this land that was taken from them that I now occupy. Type your SANKOFAs in there. Your mom, put their names. My Venezuelan grandfather, Orale pues, Ana. Put their names, presence them. We are not alone in this. We are a collection, the monarch butterfly, the many generations that make it in their journey each year. Ethiopian grandparents for sure. Thank you, Bailey. My aunt's Gladys Miller. So as you're typing in your SANKOFA, we are starting with that spirit, y'all. We have a collective legacy of being on this planet in relationship. And that is what we are centering our vision on. And so Wangari Maathai, the tree lady, I'm about to feed the tree mama like her too. So next slide. So as you are sharing, and I'm so glad actually I can see some of your chats. Terry Tempest Williams, that bomb ass, excuse my language, author. She's one of my favorites. I want to share a little bit of my SANKOFAs with you, especially as it ties into the work that I've been gifted to do in this world. And in the middle, Sequoia sempervirens, my favorite ancestor, because they've been here the longest. And with all the tomfoolery that humans throw at them, the sequoias have not given up on us. The redwood told me, every time I look at a redwood, I'm like, actually, I am not Black, I am redwood tone. And I want to be considered as a redwood American moving forward. So I'm just going to start with the redwoods as my ancestry that grounds me, knows that I'm rooted in that legacy. And then my Papa Bear, he's got white pants on up in the top. It's the left corner for me. He's kind of tilted to the side. I just want to honor Lawrence Thomas, Jelly. He used to sing, so he got the name Jelly after Jelly Roll Morton, who was a singer. And so I just want to honor my ancestor, Papa, Daddy, remember Daddy, Mommy? Jelly Thomas. And then Octavia Butler. Y'all know that feeling when you read an author and they say the words that you could never say? If y'all don't know, now you know. You need to check out, she is an ancestor, Octavia Butler. She was a science fiction writer. She wrote about this dystopian future that, oddly enough, we're living in right now. So check out Parable of the Sower. Much of my life has seemed to have followed. Interesting that she premonitioned. So Octavia Butler, another ancestor. And then the two in the corners I'm really going to focus on. First, George Washington Carver. They call him the inventor of the peanut, which is absurd because the earth invented the peanut. But what he actually did for us is he reconnected African-American farmers in the South. And he reconnected them under the premise of earth care, people care, and fair share. He taught them about restoring the soil in order to restore the African-American legacy of earth care and also redistributing goods. And I'm gonna loop back around to that at a later time, but George Washington Carver, no, he did not invent peanuts, but what he did was show us that peanuts and the earth provides all that we need, and how planting things like peanuts and soy and other things could restore, instead of planting shenaniganry that just is extractive and takes from the soil, he taught about planting things that not only restore the soil, but can restore our human connection to the earth. And then last but not least, the next slide, Harriet Tubman. And so when I had said, ain't no one else coming for me, it's also this, for us, or me, it's also this idea that even in the midst of not knowing what is happening, we also have to draw on that legacy that our ancestors and those of us that came before had, that allowed them to keep going in the face of not knowing. And lifting up that spirit, who else other than our great sister Harriet? Do y'all know that she led, if not the largest, one of the largest revolts, military revolts in the United States history? This cute little formerly enslaved earth steward African-American woman had a dream. She saw Black people free. Again, did she see the systems that would get us free? No. Did she see the cure for enslavement? No. But she had a relationship with the earth and she saw her role in getting her people free. So I draw on Harriet Tubman when I really need, and many of us are right now. She had faith and exactly. So that level of, and that's why that SANKOFA that draws on, you're not always going to see evidence, because a lot of the evidence has been designed away because they don't want us to know that we're going to be free. But Harriet Tubman said, you know what? We going to be free. And she used her relationship with the earth, her relationship with others, and designed a path forward. And so with that spirit, again, I want to share a little bit, such a strong woman, come on, y'all. And even her movie does not credit her relationship with the earth enough. And that's really why I center her and George Washington Carver, because it was their relationship, their DNA, Afro-Indigenous legacy relationship with the earth that equipped them to free other people. And that is also the spirit in which we are moving forward, all those beautiful relationships with my talk. Next slide. So a little bit about my story, Pandora Thomas. So I'm gonna start mainly with my mother's side. My mother's African-American, Native American. My father is African-American, Senegalese, and Native American, and African-American, excuse me. But focusing on my mother was born in Chiraw, South Carolina, 1939. I don't know if any of y'all out here is also Southern. My mother was Southern. So born into sharecropping. And I always say that I'm going to contact Webster's or whoever I have to and tell them they need to change the name of the word sharecropping because ain't no sharing happened in sharecropping. In fact, my mother was born into an indentured enslavitude where they had to farm the land of the owner, the person who was usually European American, but there were some African and actually Native American sharecropper owners, I have learned. But for my family, it was a man of European ancestry who owned the land that my mother was born onto. So she grew up farmed. But for them, the farming was not something that reaped a harvest because they also had to have side hustles. This is where the non-sharing comes into place. Just because they tended the land, they didn't own it. So they were stewarding the land of someone else. They had to find the resources to then buy the actual things that they were farming, okay? That's the history of sharecropping. Hence the name sharing should not be in it. So that is what my mother was seeded into. And in 1942, her and my grandparents were part of the Great Migration North. Again, much like Harriet Tubman, much like we right now, my family had no idea what they were going north to, other than this promise of freedom out of the South and out of being impoverished. It's funny that now I am so committed to the land because my family was like, get us as far away from soil, land, homesteading, making our own butter, making our own clothes. They were forced to do that. They were like, get us up out of this. So they moved north to a tiny town called Farrow, Pennsylvania, population 6,000, 1942. And it's there that my mother and my grandparents settled and became a part of the northern life. And actually it's a sweet story because my father's family also migrated north. And from the time my mother was 3, her and my father lived next door to each other. That's how they met, blah, 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 blah. Then I came along. But back to the story of Farrow, Pennsylvania. Again, thinking like, yeah, it was cute. Ain't that cute, Tasha? So migrated north, didn't know what was happening. My uncle was still a tobacco farmer. They had to send for people as they went. They get up to Farrow, Pennsylvania, and in the 40s, like many other small towns, they made a way. You know, it's one of those towns I was born into where everybody knows your name. I could be walking down the street, and if I acted a fool, someone could call me out. There was 6,000 people. Half the town literally was of European ancestry, Eastern European, Slovakian, Serbian, Yugoslav, all those. And the other half was African-American, literally from the same few towns in the South. So my parents raised me, and the first little miracle that happened is that even though they fled kind of earth stewardship and land connection in the South, as I call it, they were still able to implant that in me. So I grew up with a love of relationships. I grew up thinking about earth care. What does it look like? We had a garden. We used to fish. My father would grow wild plants and we eat them, dandelions. But again, he wasn't like, yes, we are wild crafting. And this was just what they were doing. The scraps of what was left from our African legacy of connection. And my mother could grow anything. So miraculously, even though being sharecroppers, you would have think forced that out of them, they kept that and implanted that into me. So growing up in this small steel town, tight-knit steel town, I grew up with the love of the earth, going to church, a love of relationship, a love of my neighbors. We made a way out of no way together. We weren't, quote, financially rich, but we were rich in community, rich in relationships. Both my parents worked in mills. My mother worked in what's called Westinghouse. I'm sure y'all heard of Westinghouse. Thank you, Roxanne. It does feel beautiful to be able to reminisce. And my father worked in Sharon Steel. Now here's the deep part. I lived 2 blocks from Sharon Steel. It was my house. The next block was the projects, but it was like really nice projects compared to like they were beautiful and we all wanted to live in the projects. It's so interesting how projects have changed. And then the next block was a steel mill. While this steel mill was supplying like 60% of the jobs in my town, it also over time was slowly polluting the Shenango River, slowly polluting the lungs and lives of many of the workers, including my father who worked there. So here I come from that, that industry town that we were thriving, thinking we were thriving with a steel plant that was, helping us all. But the more we learned, it was actually about to be the demise of my town. Why do I say that? When I was in high school, my father's mill shut down. And that is such a moment for me in my growth, because when the still shut down, I start to see the pattern of other things starting to kind of cascade. And I know it's happened in other towns. So when the mill shut down, my father lost his job and youth programming budgets got cut. Literally the same week, I think it was, the lights went out and you started to hear, we don't have the funding to support a lot of the programs that we have. So that was an interesting, like the connection of this industry that was killing our community, but we depended on. The other thing that I realized happened was that youth opportunities went, because it was linked to the tax base and the steel mill. So a lot of my family members and other youth in the town started to get involved in some tomfoolery, illegal tomfoolery that would involve selling things, and started to get arrested and put in jail. Mainly the African-American ones in my family. My European-American friends, they would get caught, they weren't thrown in jail. So that seed, I started, again, I was just in high school, observing these patterns. So I started to see that dynamic. A small, close-knit town, I'm 48 years old. In my lifetime, I started to see how this community's fabric started to unravel. And I'll never forget at the time, because I was like, wait, is there nothing that we can do? Is there no way? And as I talk about my journey in the future, I keep thinking, man, if only I understood this idea of what does it look like for a community to come together and plan and drive, and we could have took over the mill, but it didn't happen. Instead, what happened was I vowed that I wanted to learn, how does a community so close-knit not erupt so quickly and lose all the benefits, and observe our youth, losing jobs, losing opportunities. So that kind of planted in me the seed of what I'm sharing next. Then I move on, and I had the honor to, nope, go back. I just meant share next in my story. I'm sorry, Kia. Went to college. And again, I told y'all my parents had planted that little environmental ethic. So when I went to college, I was like, I'm about to care about the environment, but I'm also going to care about social justice, because I've seen a mill shut down. I've also seen my cousins and my uncles and people starting to get incarcerated. I also started to see, I went to college in Youngstown State University, 75% of the African-American students coming into Youngstown State University, it was projected that the men would end up in the prison they were building across the street. I kid you, you can look it up today. So I'm like, wait. How is that possible that this university in Youngstown State University is not creating graduates from a university, but creating a transition into prison? So again, these patterns in my mind, that's not right. What if these brothers that are projected to end up in prison actually could be the ones designing their future? I also, as I was because I was in the African-American Student Union, and they didn't mess with the Student for Environmental Action, but I was in the Student for Environmental Action. They didn't mess with the Organization for Women's Equality. The Organization for Women's Equality was talking about stuff. So while all of these things lived in me, the groups were very siloed. And I'm hoping if y'all feel me, but they all lived in me, y'all. The intersection, the connection, the weaving was in my life. And if y'all resonating, please share in the chat. So again, another moment where I was like, dang, what if, number one, the communities most impacted by stuff was the ones solving for problems, but also what if these issues could be woven together? If we started stacking them together so it didn't feel so isolated, especially when my well-intentioned Student Environmental Action Coalition friends would be like, Pandora, why don't the Black people care about the environment? And I'm thinking, we do. Our bodies are the environment. Our very livelihoods are the environment. And even the African-American Student Union folks would be like, y'all over there saving the whales and the owls, y'all need to be caring about the humans, weaving it. And in my mind, I was like, we are weaving it together. Again, the connection wasn't there, but it was there in me. So all of these experiences informed me that, you know what, part of my journey is, what does it look like if the people most impacted by something are able to come together, collaborate, communities designing solutions together so we're not so siloed. I moved to California after I graduated from college because that's where all confused people whose education you're not really sure what you're going to do with apparently moved to. When I moved to California, I became an educator and I got to teach kindergarten. And I was like, this is the best thing I've ever done, until I heard people start to talk about, well, these youth don't care. And these were other teachers I worked with. And I was like, wait a minute. That reminds me of what the African Americans said about the student environmental action folks and the white folks said about the Black folks. I was like, no, I know these students care. So I asked my little kindergartners, they were 5 years old, but they were my best friends. I'm that kind of a person, 50-year-old best friends with 5-year-olds. What do y'all care about? They couldn't stop talking. They cared about so much, but you know what they said? Miss P, that's what they called me. Nobody really asked us what we care about. Usually, thank you for asking us what we care. And then they would talk. So again, that just reiterates exactly, Tasha. What does the world look like in my work? Because again, there wasn't a position I could get. That was like the position that empowers community to be the leaders of their destiny and design for the solutions that we know are needed, even in the face of uncertainty. There was no position rooted in, earth-based strategies. At that time, there was no position. But since I was in California, which is the land of milk and honey around a lot of these ideas, I learned about permaculture. Next slide. So I don't know if y'all know what permaculture is. And a lot of people are like, the long word is too long. Of course, I don't know what it is. But when I learned about permaculture, next slide, I want to honor a lot of my teachers, Starhawk, Lisa DiPiano, Raptor Sass Ferguson, and other folks who shared this definition with me, that permaculture is a design system based on ecology and indigenous knowledge that increases ecosystem health while meeting human needs. Now, the beauty about when I learned about permaculture was that it was presented as a design system that observes how nature works, that empowers us all to see ourselves as designers, integrated and in relationship to meet our needs. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for. A design system that acknowledges that we're not just the ones being designed for. And we're not just, gonna engage with the outdoors or nature. Like, we have the power to understand that we are nature working. And what does it look like if we start to understand our impact and design in right relationship with systems? Next slide. And it's this whole asset-based design approach where you start by observing and interacting. So you start by observing what's happening. Again, I was like, oh, what if I would have had this in Farrell, where we would observe the patterns that made the steel mill shut down, or observed how my young cousins, which is almost bringing me to tears, got wrapped up and caught up in the prison industrial complex that was designed for them. Or what if we were able to observe and then really design solutions based off of our assets, not just having others come in and trying to solve problems so important for it. So, I got super jazzed. Next slide. I was like, this is it. Permaculture is it. And it's rooted in all these principles that are literally based on observing how the world works. Like, go into a forest. How does the forest systems work? Looking at a watershed. It's not like craziness that we don't have access to if you're a living being. And again, it was like, oh, when people ask me why African Americans don't care or Black people don't care about the environment, we are the environment. We are those principles at work. So I joined the permaculture community. I went to events. I was all excited. And then I was like, oh, this is interesting. First of all, I'm the only little chocolate drop in the milk carton. Or the few of us chocolate drops and some of the non-chocolate drops are not, the ones that we're trying to not just focus. I just realized I'm on Facebook Live. I'm not on social media. So I'm like, oh, Facebook is hearing me now. Sorry, refocus. So as I learned about permaculture, there was this moment when it was like, okay, here we are talking about these principles that are asset-based and are our communities, but I would go to events and we would only be talking about the land-based application. We weren't talking about how could permaculture design also empower human systems, transform I don't know, the police system that's, incarcerating and killing Black and brown folks. Transform injustice systems of distribution of resources, because all those principles and all that talk came up in permaculture, but it was only when I went to these events, again, wonderful events, inspired. I learned about water and soil and plant biodiversity, but I was like, wait a minute, what about the people design? Where are the people? The people are there, but where is the piece where we are designing the people systems? And slowly found my little community of others that were actually asking those same questions. So these permaculture principles, next slide, the more I started questioning, turned out, guess what? Permaculture didn't create principles based on living systems. As most everything, they exist everywhere. You can trace them as far back, the Ma'at Kemetic principles. You've got the honorable harvest, that First Nation. You've got Japanese aesthetic principles. You've got, so again, the more I learned about permaculture, I was like, okay, this is yet another interpretation, but it's this earth-based approach where we're observing how the earth works and not seeing humans as separate from that to learn from the principles, but that we actually flow and exist within those principles. It's the grandma principles, y'all, that your grandma told you, waste not, want not. Come to find out, waste not, want not is actually a permaculture principle. So all this journey that I've been on, myself and others that I've worked with, we started to ask the question, so then how do we really put this to the test? What does it look like if this approach of permaculture design and these principles can empower communities to design their future, embedded in right relationship with humans and non-humans, embedded in right relationship with reconnecting to each other, but also embedded with a relationship where there's going to be enough for us to continue, that humans can actually live within systems without draining it completely and devoid and just making it a wasteland, but we're restoring. So that's the journey that myself and many of you on this call, I'm like, could be giving this talk. So honored to be a part of this journey, but I want to share how some of those principles play out and some of the work that I've had a chance to be a part of. Next slide. And just let me know if y'all still with me. So I'm gonna go through some of the principles and I think you'll really relate to them. And I'm gonna share a couple videos of the programs and the projects and how they play out. My first principle that I love so much, my favorite, this idea of the problem is a solution. Permaculture always say the problem is a solution. And the more land-based example is, if there is a wet spot on your land, then that's a great place for a pond. Again, the problem of flooding, pooling in a place might be telling you that you need to redesign. Again, permaculture, y'all didn't make that up. Bob Marley, the stone that the builder refused will always be the head cornerstone. Y'all know Bob Marley said that. So again, this idea of these principles have been in our communities, and what does it look like when we acknowledge the legacy, but also how they play out in our communities. Next slide. So remember I told y'all about the problem of incarceration in my community? Well, moved to California, and there was a lot of other brothers and sisters working on this problem. And I worked with this woman, Angela Seven. I just want to give her credit. And when I came to California, she actually took me with Van Jones. We went in to San Quentin, and because I was like, Angela, I really want to be supporting. So many of my brothers and sisters are in my hometown, and my family are incarcerated. I want to be doing something. So I started going into working in San Quentin with Angela and others and learning more about this problem. And this slide just shows, and it's probably so much more now, on the left, that more Black men are incarcerated than any other group, right? Quick to the point with that. But the real interesting thing about this problem is that California actually did something about it. Not because of our governor at the time, but actually because of the people like the Angela Sevens and the others organizing, many of them incarcerated or formerly incarcerated brothers and sisters, and created the public safety realignment. Next slide. So public safety realignment was basically saying we got too many people incarcerated in California for nonviolent offenses and just for other things. So we need to release people out. So they were going to go from prison to jail back out into the world. And again, it was not necessarily the governor that did that, he passed it, but it was all the lobbying and work of lots of other organizers. So tens of thousands of people have been released from California, y'all, this problem. And it was a problem because they was like, wow, all these people are coming home and reentry is broken. So those of us in the permaculture community, I'm about to show you a video of what we did. We said, you know what, we're gonna test this. If this problem, if we see these men and women coming home as a problem, next slide, how can we turn them into the solution that they really are anyway? So we called it the Mandela welcome. You know when Mandela got out of prison, what did the world do? Yay, Mandela free. They was dancing, they was happening. I get it. These brothers and sisters coming home from prison may not be the equivalent of Mandela to y'all, but they're the equivalent to Mandela to somebody because they are a part of our community. They have been taken many times, not for things they've done, or because they got caught doing stuff that we've all done. So instead of tens of thousands of people coming home being a problem, we turn it into a solution. Get the principle? Tens of thousands of people coming home mixed with a permaculture design approach, asset-based, we designed pathways to resilience. And I want to share this video. It's about 9 minutes to show you the power of the earth and relationship in restoring our communities. Go ahead, Kia, please share the video. Oh, there's no sound. There's no sound. There's no sound. Do y'all hear sound? There's no sound. Kia, there's no sound. There's no sound. You have to turn on a certain setting. I'm not working this, so I'm depending on the person working it. She's gonna start it over. Thank you all for your patience. This is Technology Landia. There we go. That's okay. We patient. Life is a blessing.
I was muted. Okay.
Coming together today with the participants, the community, the staff, we are all equal. So starting with that intention, again, I welcome you to the second cohort of Pathways to Resilience. So permaculture design is just a way to talk about observing nature and natural systems and learning from those natural systems to design our lives.
Well, permaculture, going up to Merritt College, dealing with the instructor Timar, I'm excellent information, and a lot of things that he taught us dealing with the earth and the growth process of it. You know, I took that and applied to the growth process with myself.
I learned a lot about nature. I learned a lot about plants, and I learned a lot about life itself.
Just like the plants grow around the earth, the weather comes, everything is cycle, you know. And I'm trying to get back on that track of that cycle.
I want to do the farm thing, you know what I mean? You know, get everything going right. That's something that's in me on my other side of me. You know? I got one side and I got another side. So that's my other side.
Really, it's just about growth and like really, you know what I mean, being able to just dissect the situations that you've been in and find that information.
The biggest highlight of this program is that I've learned a lot of permaculture. I learned a lot about eating healthy. Well, I'm a Samoan, so our culture is we eat a lot of unhealthy food. Growing your own foods is the best thing to do.
What surprised me the most is like, I never thought I was gonna take a shovel and start digging into the soil. Like, oh my God, am I really doing this? But it was like, I really actually liked it. I didn't know that the dirt had different, like 3 different soils, like, you know, clay, rock, sand. It was really fascinating to me.
When we had a program like this, like giving formerly incarcerated people a permaculture design certificate while working out some of the trauma, while giving them tools in the social enterprise on how to use, you know, all of this stuff that's learning.
How can these resources be gained for folks that are formerly incarcerated that's coming out in the home, a community, before they get out to the real community?
I need someone, you know, to help me grow in my process. You know, and I have grown up, you know, with this permaculture program. I met great people, great resources, and that's what men and women like myself, that's what we need, those type of resources. We need those type of people in our lives.
Well, I'll say the highlight has been the social enterprise class or piece of the Pathways to Resilience program. I'm starting my own business, so being able to have a head start on that and being able to use the tools that is being taught in that course.
My favorite part of the program was social enterprise. I got a lot out of it. Made me unleash my potential and it made me bring me out a little bit to hear my voice. I learned a lot from here. You know, it opened a lot of doors for me. And now that I have my foot in the door, my other foot go find the rest of the ground in the house.
Doing whatever it takes to get back on the right track. Since I was last incarcerated, came home, and I want to be about something positive, mingle and coexist with people who are positive. That's why this program is important to me.
I was able to be introduced to a whole lot of incredible people, and I was able to build networks also with those folks.
I'm just willing to learn and try something different to help better myself and be reintegrated back into society with a positive outlook.
If I was still incarcerated, there'd be no way I could be an intricate part of my family, to my community. I would be no help to anyone. And today, all that has changed because of Pathways to Resilience.
For what I am today, shame on my past, but shame on me if I remain that way.
I would like to see more willing inmates come out and have a resource that they can grab hold to.
My journey from the beginning to now, it's really been a growing process for me.
I learned a lot. Because this really helped me understand more about life.
This is the pathway to resilience. Maybe not today, but tomorrow. But we graduate on the weekend. And man, I am as excited as I was because I'm getting a certificate I can put in a frame.
I think about this program as opportunity. You know, every time I think about it, you know, just the skills that I'm able to learn, you know what I mean? Thinking about who am I going to meet today? What am I going to be able to pick up from them?
Well, and I'm looking forward for the graduation, but mainly I'm looking forward to be the alumni part.
My name is Augustine Torres.
My name is Regent.
My name is Julie Walker.
My name is Linda Candelaria.
My name is Lawrence Walker.
My name is James.
My name is Wilmer Osmond III. I go by my Muslim name, Sadiq.
My name is Rachel.
My name is Minister Calvin Lawrence.
Hello. My name is Victor Blanco.
Hi, my name is Keisha Evans.
Well, my name is Philip Byers.
My name is Douglas.
I'm Tyann Bowens, member of Pathways to Resilience.
Thank you, Kia. And so I just want to share that we have lost 2 brothers from the video, Minister Lawrence and Siddiqui, since that program. So just taking a moment of silence for their spirits and honoring their commitment and the work they did. So yeah, it was like, oh, okay. So it does turn out that these principles apply to human systems. Next slide. And this other principle, this idea of using on-site resources to sort of determine what resources are available and entering the site on their own, then maximize their use. That idea is like, you know, if I was a permaculture designer, the land-based, I would come to your site and I wouldn't say, okay, so I'm bringing my own sunshine and I'm gonna ship in some water and soil and stuff. The idea is I would come and see, okay, what's already there? What is already flourishing? How does the sun hit your site? How's the wind hitting your site? Where's the house situated? Determining what's already there. It's the same in our communities. You heard them, brothers and sisters, say they're their community's best resource. So again, if we start with determining, again, this idea of the problem and solution, what is already on a site, or even what brilliance is already in our communities. Next slide. And this is really relevant. I'm sure many of you use this idea of community asset mapping. How do people embedded in a community understand the situation and what is already being done? Not bulldozing in and saying, okay, we're here to save the day, but actually we're here to listen and see what y'all doing, understand. And that's what me and Angela did in San Quentin. We asked the men there and they were like, y'all need to go out now and really share what we've learned with the men outside. That's why we started Pathways to Resilience. But even the community asset mapping with the brothers and sisters from Pathways to Resilience helped us design the program better. Region, who was in the video the first year, he was a participant. Second year, he became the peer mentor. So again, how do we, if there's one or two, if there's more than one person gathered and there's a community, there is someone thinking about what needs to be done and somebody working on it. They might not call it what we call it, and the resiliency and the kind of adaptation and the climate people really need to get this, because our folks are talking about these things, what we talk about it differently. So if we can start by asset mapping, what is there? How do communities vision and understand what needs to be? What do communities see as working? This is a prime opportunity. That's that community driven, that we can garner that energy and that brilliance. Next slide. So I'm really excited to share this program. That's another example. So Healthy Parks, Healthy People is a global program. And the idea is that, you know, there are parks everywhere and another asset that all of our communities have. And if we really want to encourage people to spend more time in the outdoors, let's start with something that's there. Everybody, even if it's just a little patch, most everybody has access to a park. And so the goal of Healthy Parks, Healthy People was, what does it look like to not just get people to go to our parks, but add a health benefit? Healthy Parks, Healthy People partnered with some physicians and started like a script program. Next slide. Park prescriptions. And what park prescriptions was like, you know what? We as doctors understand, and it took them a while to understand something so basic, that time in the outdoors, your hands with the soil, time in nature is actually healing. So the goal of Healthy Parks was Healthy People was, you know what? People do spend time in the parks, but we want them to spend the kind of time that park prescriptions encourages. And some of the doctors were observing that it was hard to get some communities, while a lot of communities spend time in the parks, you know, it was hard to get that quality time in the parks. And so how did we do this? I partnered with a woman, Dr. Nasheen Razani, and I just want to give props to her. And I want to acknowledge that she's from Iran. And I'm sharing she's from Iran specifically because she said, she brought the ethos from Iran, being a doctor, that everything was done in relationship to nature and the seasons and the earth. So she was one of the people that helped start park prescriptions, but also saw the challenge of getting folks when they would get a park prescriptions to take advantage. So we were like, okay, let's do some community asset mapping. Who's already in the parks? Can you go back to the last slides? And guess who is already going to the parks? Specifically in San Francisco, Bayview Hunters Point, which by the way, has 14 parks. And for y'all not from the Bay Area that might be listening, Bayview Hunters Point used to be one of the largest African-American owned areas African-American home ownership areas in San Francisco, the numbers are down, but we still there. So it turns out when we did an asset map, it was these elders, not just Black, but a lot of elders from the South that were already spending the kind of quality time that we wanted in the parks. Next slide. So we said, okay, we've asset mapped. Why don't we partner with this existing group? Remember the ethos, and Nusheen was like, usually the youth listen to their elders because it was really the youth that would get park prescriptions and not take advantage. And we were like, what if we built this asset of seniors already visiting parks, hosted a little training with them just to build up their juju, paid them. The training just shared something they were already doing. Nusheen shared some more medicinal health benefits, and then stipend them to recruit the younger generation. Y'all get into the idea, the problem, the solution, community asset mapping, using on-site resources, call them seeds, and boom. They partnered with the park naturalists. Next slide. We also designed a program that we didn't have to fund and run forever. We designed it once. We harvest the expertise of these elders' lived experience, and we relinquish control, which is a principle I'm about to get to. But these elders were doing, and this is us on the day where we did the training. It was so cute. So first we did the little health training, and then we all went on a hike. Again, they already was doing it. So this is an example, and we also didn't design something, again, that I had to be the director of forever. Nonprofit industrial complex is a hard thing to deal with, but we wanted to design something that could eventually be designed out of having a need for. Next slide. So we wanted to do relinquish control. That's another principle. So this idea in permaculture land-based is like, okay, when you do a design in permaculture of land, you're assuming that the sun hits the solar panels and, gives energy to the house, and the water gets captured, and the rainwater capturement is diverted to the irrigation, feeds the water. And inside the, you don't have a little person running around doing all that. You creating a design that becomes self-managed. What if we created programs having faith in our communities and not having the non-profit industrial complex that started to self-manage? And go back to last slide. This program, we ran it once, it's still going. And not only is it still going, it don't even have to be a program. It's the life. These elders recruit people, take their, you know what I'm saying? So next slide. How are we relinquishing control? And I have to say, I don't have an answer. I work with a nonprofit, but I'm still putting it out there. Because remember, Harriet Tubman didn't have the answer. Come on, Tasha. Didn't have the answer, but she still did it. We got to get to a place where we are not designing things that's going to forever take the people working in it to run it. We got to see victory for our communities. Our communities driving their destiny, not dependent on all. But here's the beautiful thing. The seniors still want to work with us. We don't have to fear that if we design something that eventually the seniors can run, there ain't gonna be no work for us. That's slack thinking. Abundance thinking assumes there will be work for all of us because all of us need this. So self-managed systems are not like systems that don't need support, but it's the people that can partner with communities that will be, and that can relinquish control and not think that they have to go in. And I can't help thinking, ooh, what would this look like in my hometown of Farrell? If we would have got together, raised the money, bought the steel mill, and created like some type of a restorative renewable energy company. Y'all feel me? I've given that up because I'm not moving back to my hometown for many reasons, but y'all feel like the growth. And I feel that I'm now able to be of service to the world in this way. Next slide. So this last principle of stacking functions, also a favorite one, and I've been speaking about it. In permaculture, we talk about getting many yields from one thing. And again, like a tree in a permaculture design does a lot of stuff. It gives shade, it's habitat, you can make mulch, you can build with it, fertilize it. Y'all get the feel, protect from erosion. Are the things we're designing, and actually the things that communities tend to design when they have the power, have to solve for multiple things. So here's a social design consideration, not just for designing programs and projects, even in our own lives, we do this. How can we design experience that meet multiple needs? And I have to say again, 9 times out of 10, in my experience, when communities are empowered to be the designers, they do that. Think about it. When moms with children, I gotta work and design stuff, they usually design things. That's why folks say if you solve for like the lowliest, poorest, whatever, you're gonna solve for everybody because you're gonna be thinking about everything. So stacking functions. How are we stacking functions with our designs? We also did that for the Healthy Parks, Healthy People. We couldn't just get elders outside. They were already outside, but we needed to pay them. Compensate them for their expertise of their lives, not the degrees they had in environmental this and that. Their very lives were the expertise that deserved compensation. Yes, Tasha, you be feeling me because you're kind of like me and do the same stuff I do. Next slide. So I think someone messaged and asked if y'all could stay after. I apologize, it's 6. I'm gonna need about 15 more minutes if that's okay. So here is one of the programs, because the last thing you saw, Pathways to Resilience, no longer exist. Nonprofit industrial complex. You can hit me up later and understand why. The people are all still doing the work, but the People's Plan is the work I'm honored and gifted to do now. And I have a 3-minute video to show. And this is also kind of the culmination of all these principles and the application of social design at play. Take it away. Here. Ooh, and Tasha, it's a new video. So it's like a truncated version.
One thing that has me thinking differently now is becoming one with the raindrop and thinking of how would this raindrop travel, where would it go, what would it do, what would it affect, and thinking like that, not just for now, but thinking about the future generations to come. How would this raindrop affect now and later, and then coming up with ways that would effectively capture that raindrop and put it to good use so that it doesn't cause damage now or even more damage later. To me, that was one of the most interesting things.
The rest of the Bay Area is ready for the on-the-ground expertise and talent to be the guiding principle. Because no longer is this idea of only experts coming in to save us and save the Bay Area. Now it's the homegrown expertise partnering with, you know, other experts. But again, starting with the homegrown people, living with these issues, experiencing them day by day. They now understand a lot of what I understand in a very short time. It's been very empowering and reiterating something that I know ultimately that we all are designers.
It's really unlikely that any community ever got together, looked at a piece of vacant urban land and said, hey, you know what we need here? We need more market rate development. That's exactly what's going to make this a nicer place to live. And yet that's typically what tends to happen. In fact, it's exceedingly rare that communities ever get to actually participate in the design of their place. We need to begin with the foundation of planning that is by the people and for the people. That can serve as a starting place where developers, designers, and agencies can come together and collaborate with the community from the beginning. This is something we might call a people's plan. And a people's plan is truly inclusive, where the needs of everyone are met with nobody left out.
We can change the agency side and the government side and the corporation side to see the residents as creators and as equals at the table. And so the People's Plan is a perfect way to do that. And I can easily see the People's Plan being something that is a tool to help the community leaders here and throughout the Bay Area.
Flooding, we have to be able to deal with this issue. And this is why we have our class. Designing our own solutions to look at what can we do as a community to address some of these flooding issues. But the relationship that we have with the Permaculture Institute group, it's a real relationship. It's a relationship that says, you know, we care about your community, and we don't normally get that from groups. We don't get the sincerity that people really matter. And that's the difference that we have here.
Thank you. So yeah, that's the People's Plan. If you want to know more about the People's Plan, I could share in the next slide. So again, what I'm trying to do is give you a little bit of like an intro to permaculture, but with a twist. The permaculture that, because there's something called permaculture and then there's like social permaculture. And many of us are like, why does there have to be a social permaculture? Permaculture in and of itself is social. It's about people. It's not just non-people, you know. So the People's Plan is kind of the non-top down, community driven. It's what my little hometown of Barrow needed. And here's another permaculture principle. And I think this is so crucial for us. You don't even have to read all these words. What are the patterns? We all understand patterns, our heartbeat, you know, all of us are patterns repeating themselves. So don't overcomplicate it. Again, we all get it. If you just make it plain to folks, that's a permaculture principle of designing from patterns to detail. So in people's planning, we use the pattern of the watershed because Marin City is like a bowl. And it's so funny. One of the women was like, I always thought a watershed was literally a shed up at the top of a city with water in it. And I was like, and that makes a lot of sense. I would have thought that too, if no one took the time to really help me understand. So we talked about the pattern of the watershed and how everybody lives in a watershed. Everybody lives in a watershed. And much of our watersheds have been paved over, piped over, and pumped out water. So what does it look like? They understand that, but the details of each place's specific strategies that will make sense are going to change. But again, they immediately got patterns to detail. Very complicated engineering concept. Nope. So the community quickly started to learn about solutions, curb cuts and bioswales, and and they started to confidently understand, okay, what does it look like as we adapt? And they know it's not one size fits all. There are patterns in life, and what are the specific details? The brothers and sisters from the video, the reentry video, spoke of this too. So again, here's a permaculture principle that makes it plain. And here's the best part. It shows up in our lives too. What are the patterns for working with groups that nourish healthy groups? And you change the details depending on the group. Next slide. And if y'all feeling this, again, you could put it in, because I'm getting to that point where I'm like, I can't tell I'm talking to myself and the monarch. I hope they're feeling me. This other principle is my favorite. I know I keep saying they're all my favorite, but they really kind of are. You can have many favorites, right? Small, slow solutions. Now, right now, with our president, we didn't need a small, slow. We need a grand, swooping, get all the shenaniganry out, quick, far-reaching solution. But the thing with smaller and slower solutions is if they don't work, they're easier to adapt. The other thing with small solutions, because in permaculture, advises for small solutions, because again, you can shift them if they're not working. But for communities, the smaller solutions tend to be the ones that people can do with their hand. People can make a curb cut and build a bioswale and build a rainwater catchment and even install solar. Doing a levee, not so much. A horizontal, these large gray. So the small, slow solutions for our community are also things that they relate to and they can come up with themselves. So this idea of small, slow solutions has a place, and even in our own lives, small tweaks, think about it, your own life. It's not always having to be big swooping. Again, with our presidency and the system we're living in now and violence with the police, big swooping changes need to happen. But there's small, slow solutions that we could tweak in our everyday life and in our systems that we're designing for that people really relate to. And then they feel ownership. And they're like, I can come out and build that. I can come out and put my hands in that. Y'all feel me? Next slide. So those were things, I just wanted to share those videos. Those are the principles. And I have a few more things. Carrie had said it's good to see examples. I wanted to share, and it's not just me. Imagine all the people, the ecosystem of Pandora's world that I work with. I'm just the person sharing on this call. But we also, me and Zakia Harris started the Black Permaculture Network. That was also a problem because we were like, are there Black people that love permaculture? So we started a network to attract them. The Facebook page. I am not on social media. So like I said before, if you try to contact me there, it's not going to work. But there's other people running it. And if you are not a Black person, you will not be let into the Black Permaculture Network, but you can refer people and you can also help fund our work. But that's another thing. The problem was we didn't know if there was Black people. We created a network for us. And now we have a hub for generating conversation. Tasha's a part of it. You know, it's a place. Next slide. There was this whole issue. People were like, well, all these women don't feel safe at permaculture trainings. We don't have enough women teachers. So Lisa DiPiano, my permaculture work wife, was like, contacted me. We were like, okay, here's a problem we can solve. Let's have a permaculture teacher training that's just for women. We had 5 and this only shows 3. It's the best thing that I do on top of the WIA thing, on top of this and taking care of my mom. And let me tell you something. We didn't spend time talking about men or how horrible men were because we spent so much time just loving each other and learning from each other. So the absence of a group does not mean the negation of the group. It actually meant the abundance of opportunity for the richness of the group. So permaculture teacher training for women. Lisa just had a little baby Esme. So we won't be offering this right away, but hopefully in 2022, we'll be offering more because now there's more permaculture teachers that are women. And someone was like, well, that's not, you're segregating. We were like, we sure are. And we're going to keep doing it because it's shenanigans for women in permaculture courses and you can't stop us. So that's exciting. And last but not least, next slide, accelerating women's climate solutions. And Amira told you a little bit about that. I'm honored to be one of the designers and the facilitators. This is the group from last year who actually play a role as mentors. Tasha's in this video. We'll have another photo of this. We just had the 2nd year and I'm telling you, stuff I be doing with the women folk be the best of stuff, especially when it be women of color. It's just amazing. And again, we don't spend much time talking about men at all because we're so busy talking about us. So yeah, I just don't have to say. Here's another problem. You know, frontline women not getting the resources they need. We have started the program. So take this moment, y'all. Oh, and Tasha had the best time. Next slide. So here are the principles. These are just 6 of them. Here's the other thing. Permaculture has this list. Dave Holmgren came up with 12, Bill Mollison 12. Guess what? Those are not the only principles. If you have eyeballs and you can observe natural systems, you're going to observe principles and they apply. So there are permaculture principles and then there's those just life. And if you start observing life, you learn principles. So these are just a few that I wanted to share, but I want to encourage y'all. Y'all are all designers, whether you know it or not. Some of the situations, if not most that you're in, you designed or someone designed for you. So let's reclaim our community's brilliance and expertise. Next slide. The earth is calling us back. The earth and non-humans are calling us back. It's too long. Even COVID. We got to stop having a battle against this and demonize. No, COVID too, born out of the earth. Stupidity that humans did. We need to listen and learn from it, not attack it and call it, because the more we demonize, y'all know, the more we demonize stuff, the bigger it grows. So we need to build relationships and understand what is this darn thing trying to teach us about ourselves and the systems we're a part of. Next slide. So your question, oh, did I take it out? Oh, this is linking my passions and assets to be of service to the world. No, go back, sorry. This is where you can find me. I'm a fellow at Movement Strategy Center doing community-driven planning. So remember when I was all sad in Farrell, Pennsylvania? Now I'm happy because all I get to do, other than take care of my cute little mom star and cats, is help communities fulfill their predetermined legacy of expertise and brilliance to solve for the world we need to have. And I also get to work with the Urban Permaculture Institute, designing permaculture program. Then I take care of those 2 cats. That's actually not an updated photo. That's one of the cats is no longer living, but I take care of cats and that cute little mom star. That's the love of my life. And that's where you can find me. And that's how I'm linking my passion and assets to be of service to the world. Next slide. Okay, how can your assets help you stack functions? See me dropping all the principles as you continue to design the links in your work, in your life, in your path. And what is one thing, and please start to share in the chat, you will start to do to capture the energy from this presentation? What is something that either you harvested or was it useless? Which is, I'm sorry if it was, you wasted an hour and 20 minutes, but if you learned something, how are you going to start to applying that in your life? Do we have enough time for comments or questions, or no, we got to kind of keep moving?
I think you can go ahead and take a few questions.
Okay. If they're questions that are like about race and stuff, I'm probably not gonna answer them because I don't have answers about racism. I don't know what to do about that. So I'm just gonna tell you that now. But if you have questions about stuff I presented, I would appreciate if you just shared them in the chat, and I'll do my best.
Pandora, there was one question that happened a little while ago that I recorded, which is, can you share a little bit about if there's a primer on this, or how do you do a community map? And that was from Marie Gunter.
Great question. Well, so again, community asset mapping, I did not make it up. Plenty of people do it, even we, Movement Strategy Center, we have an ecosystem mapping process, and I can actually share the language with that. And we have steps. We do something called relational mapping. So if you want the Movement Strategy Center's approach, you can email me and I can send you that. But there's also a lot of them out there. If you just put community asset mapping, there's kind of steps. Some design processes include them, but I would love to share some of the language that we use at Movement Strategy Center, which basically has you start with mapping what is working. That's key. Don't even start with what's not working, because that'll take you down one way. What is working, who's working on it, and how are they solving the problems?
Thank you.
Another question? Is everybody seeing all my slides, what I'm seeing right now? Kia, could you make it just maybe the next slide? I don't know what people are seeing, but yes, another question. How these design principles be applied to policy design, or do you know anyone working on that? Totally fangirl. Oh, you're so cute, Leah Lee. Emma, that's a great question. Yes. So, oh wait, someone had a question about policy design. Let me not lie and act like I know anything about policy design. I'm sure it could. I'm not a policy person. I think permaculture would be great if we made all of our policies based off of that. Movement strategy. I don't know. Does anybody else know? I'm sure. Because you know, here's something that's interesting happening now. Because I have friends that are like, my friend Wade Crowfoot is the head of the natural something big in California. And my other friend Jared is the head of the EPA. And so they're wanting to now meet and talk about how policies rooted in what we're talking about are applicable. But I am not a policy person, but I'm assuming because policies were created by people, and I've kind of debunked that idea that people aren't part of this, you know what I mean? So I think if there was a policy that before a planning process happened, it had to do community asset mapping, that would absolutely make planning better. I will go out on a limb and say that. I also think if there was a policy that you could not build new housing without identifying the assets, resources, and needs of an existing, you know what I'm trying to say? Like an existing community, it would help with gentrification. So I'm feeling like, but I shy away from policy because I don't know, I just don't know much about it. Anybody else have thoughts about that? Okay, let me see if there's another question. Do you know of any K-12 school teacher that has adopted multi-self? Oh, I am a K-12 school teacher. And I actually used to teach kindergarten through 12, and I have a bunch of curriculum that I multi-solving in their class project lessons. So yeah, I have, and I could maybe dig up some curriculum. But I also know, actually Carrie might know, she's up by you. And answer each other, y'all. Tora is asking if there's any school teachers that have adopted multi-solving in their class projects and lessons. And we did this with an org called Grind for the Green, where we worked with high school. Oh no, I'm sorry. ESLI, the Environmental Service Learning Initiative. That's a whole other video I could show you. We went into high schools in San Francisco and we used permaculture to teach the young people to design. So I could share some information about that, but I could only share so many videos and I don't want to overwhelm y'all. After this talk, I'm going to try to start applying permaculture principles to my education, especially seeing problems as solutions and stacking functions. Yay. Any other questions? I want to explore how to help fund volunteer for some of the orgs and principles you presented tonight. Okay, Jennifer, hit me up. I have ideas. Any other comments, questions?
Can I ask a, hello?
Yeah.
I got a question, or a comment. I couldn't type fast enough.
I love you.
It was something that you said in your, that you said when you talked about them designing jails to go, and it made me think of policy. But when you said that, it made me think of how this system has designed against nature.
Yes.
And so with, you know, with policy, it's just about us going back and taking it back to design with nature, and of course we are nature, humans are nature, we are part of nature. So it was just that I was thinking about what you said about the jails, and they were designing jails for them. And so it's just like you have an element of people who are designing intentionally against nature. Yeah, that's it.
Brilliance, girl. I mean, it's deep if you think. Prisons are designed like schools, are designed like hospitals. You know what I mean? Like many of the buildings that we go into to do things, the setup is, you know, you go into these so like you said, that's not really how natural systems always exist. There's way more, you know, intersections and spaciousness. So Tasha answered it. Anyone else? Questions, comments? School to prison pipeline, small. Any thoughts on asset mapping during COVID? Any tips? You know what? I was thinking of that. So early on in COVID, I was like, oh, I hope that they're working with people who've had COVID and, you know, trying to understand people who've been through it. What did they do? How did it? And clearly I already saw they weren't. But also, because COVID is another shock in the so many shocks of so many communities, I would say, again, the same things that are helping other communities deal with other shenaniganry is gonna help through COVID. So this First Nation organization was talking about how for Native American folks, again, there's been so many pandemics that have attempted to wipe people out. So they listed their principles that they've used. I don't know them off, but it's like, yes, COVID is a specific experience that we're realizing now, but there's patterns. And so if we continue to listen to the people with the quote most power in these high positions that are completely disconnected from the actual on the ground, I'm not surprised where we are right now. But I would say, how do we listen more to, because I was even like, well, I really want to know what seniors think. I haven't heard enough. You know, from what seniors think, who are the largest group dying right now. I would think you should have this whole cadre of seniors talking. You know, like, again, the people being most impacted, there should just be committees of them. But I didn't have time to start something like that. But in my mind, I just kind of go back to, okay, who are the people most being impacted? Am I hearing from them? Not so much. Even I saw a commercial, it was just so weird, like how we don't give voice to the people. Like it was a Medicare commercial. And it was this 30-some woman talk about the benefits of Medicare for seniors, you know, those kind of things. So how do we center? So we're talking about COVID. I would be interested in, what are the seniors who are alone? How do we connect to them? People who've had it and survived and are now thriving, what lessons do they have to teach? That resilience cycle, we lifting it up. Okay. My nephew in prison. He is currently in prison, so we're working on this. His name is John. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so I think it's almost 6:30. We've gone over. I can't believe people are still here. But I do you want to show the last 2 slides? Because they're kind of cute. They have veto, relinquish, control. Exactly. Tasha, come on. So I like to share, it's my next to last slide. I have this on a mug too. I'm sure I'll say advice from a tree. In this moment that we find ourselves in, I feel we're all so privileged that we have our, at least as much as possible, right mind and body at this moment. Please continue to stand tall and proud. Sink your roots into the earth. Believe fully and wholeheartedly in the earth's wisdom. Be content with your natural beauty. Go out on a limb, drink plenty of water, remember your roots, and enjoy the view, y'all, because life is sacred and just, we got to take it each step. And as I said at the beginning, ain't nobody coming to save us. This is the us show. So let's get to it and work together. Last slide. Thank you and have a good evening. And here's how you can find me for day, pandorathomas.com. For the rest of the year, I'm just focusing on me and my mother's health. I am not planning on helping start anything more. If you email me and ask me to pick my brain, I will take that as a painful experience and say no. But if you want to email and, ask me questions, yeah, so just that pick my brain will cause me to be like, nah, because it sounds crazy. But if you do want to follow up with me, maybe just think of the exchange that you're asking about and not just kind of picking my brain. Let's say that because it's very painful. Love y'all for being here with me this evening. Boundaries. Yes, Tasha, boundaries. And take care. Go and hug something that's non-human after this talk. That's my homework for you all now. Go love something up that ain't a blapping human. Love you. Bye.
Before everybody jumps off, let's just take a second here to unmute and give a shout out to Pandora, because this was just a beautiful hour and a half of wisdom dropping. So give it here to Pandora.
Thank you. Thank you, Pandora.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pandora. And as Pandora shared, the U.S. Grassroots Accelerator is having an event next week on the 15th, and we'll be sending out information about that event. So hope everyone can join. And then we'll also send information about ways you can stay connected and take action after this event here today. Some calls to action, which we'll include in an email tomorrow. But for now, I want to let everyone go off to have experience your predetermined legacy of excellence that Pandora called us all into. So may we all live into our predetermined legacies of excellence. And take care, everyone. Be well.
Bye, and BB says goodbye. This black
Thank you, Melinda.